we get going, we're recording the session, so anybody else who joins will be able to catch up, I'm sure. So we'll get it cracking. So welcome to another of the Dynamics 365 Unlocked series. Today, we've got an exciting session. We're bringing it in conjunction with our partners at Fastly and Smart, or FLS for short, as you'll hear us referring to them as throughout the session. What we'll be exploring today is some of the very basic functionality, I suppose, of Dynamics 365 Field Service, and most importantly, actually, how that's going to work in conjunction with the FLS Visitour solution. So for those of you who don't know, Visitour is an upgraded scheduling for the out-of-the-box Dynamics Field Service functionality. And what we're going to see is, I suppose, some of the additional functionality and benefits that planners or schedulers will see when using that in conjunction with Dynamics. And most importantly as well, how it's going to deliver real value for organizations from day one when you're using it. It's a bit more of an advanced session, so we'll be covering some of the sort of standard functionalities of Field Service in full at a later date on another session. So if you're using, if you're not using Dynamics at all, or perhaps using an antiquated D365 environment, we'll be doing another session just on the field service piece, and a few pieces of housekeeping as well just before we get going. Just to let you know, obviously this session is being recorded, so if you can't stay with us for the full hour, or perhaps you have any colleagues who couldn't join us today, we're more than happy to send across the recording afterwards as well, and then you can catch up on anything you might have missed, or if you want to send across to anyone who can't join us. Finally as well, it is a Microsoft Teams event, so unfortunately, whilst we can't hear you speak and we can't see you today, on the plus side, if you're making cups of tea in the background, dogs are barking, or you're just overjoyed and want to jump up and down with excitement, that's all good. So don't hold it back. Please let all the excitement out. Any questions as well? You'll see that people have obviously started popping bits in the chat, so do feel free to drop any questions or say hello in the chat as well. If there's anything really specific that we can't answer today, we'll follow up with. But there are members of both ANS and FLS in the background who'll be answering questions and keeping that ticking over. Right, without any sort of further ado, let me introduce myself. So my name's Hamish Milner. I'm one of the account directors here in the business applications team here at ANS, and everything Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform falls under my responsibility. I'm joined here by my colleague Cameron, who I'll let introduce himself.
Cheers, Hamish. So I'm Cameron Bertram. At ANS, I work as a Microsoft Dynamics pre-sales solution architect, and I work within the business applications team. I'm responsible for working with customers in those early stage sales engagements to scope and shape Dynamics solutions. So what that means is that I will run workshops to understand your strategy, your pain points, and capture your requirements, and then go off and design a solution proposal to meet those requirements and deliver on that strategy. I've been working with Dynamics since 2008, so way back in CRM version 4. And I'll introduce you to Simon.
Hi, thanks, Cameron. Hi, everybody. Simon Spriggs from FLS. I head up the partnerships channel here at FLS. Hence, obviously, I'm on the call today with the team from ANS to obviously talk about scheduling, the scheduling side. My background, I've lived and breathed field service all my life, from starting off as a field service scheduling manager, all the way through to kind of being on the other side of the fence now on the software world. So live and breathe service, always have and love it. Brilliant. Back to you, Hamish.
Thank you, gents. I like as well that no one else puts their glasses in their photos, just me. I'm the only proud specs wearer, clearly. There we go. Right, so as I mentioned, this is the latest in our installments of Dynamics 365 Unlocked series. And really what I want to jump into it today. So a few signs you might need better field service or scheduling, and just to sort of set the scene, I suppose, a little bit. If we think about some of the use cases for scheduling and field service, everything comes back really to revenue generation or cost savings, whether that's cost savings in time or cost savings in cash. And really, when we look at the backdrop against which organizations are using this, the world is changing kind of in a post-COVID world where everybody was working from home. More and more people are now working in either a hybrid manner or going back to the office full time. And so that time window for engineers to actually attend site, site and see you is narrowing. We aren't all sat at home at the end of the day in our joggers anymore, so ready and able to let engineers in. And so making sure that we maximize the use of engineer time and find those time windows and really utilize them is so key to how organizations are running now. There are also a lot fewer skilled engineers in the marketplace, so more people going into alternative forms of work. And so ensuring that you are really efficient with the time and the resources you have is so important. When we look at some of those different, these are some of the things that we hear really frequently from both an ANS and an FLS perspective as to why people want to, use more to do with scheduling and field service. If I pick out a couple that I like and I hear very frequently, too much time planning jobs. Time is quite literally money for organizations, and so making that efficient use of resources is so key to the profitability. And SLAs not being hit is another key one as well. So we all know that it's much easier to retain your customers than it is to win new business. But if you can't provide a really good quality of service and hit those SLAs, that becomes a heck of a lot trickier. So making sure that you're keeping efficient and you're providing the level of service that you've promised you're going to clients is so key in this day and age. So how does Microsoft Dynamics Field Service and FLS work in conjunction? Cameron, I'll let you explain in a bit more detail if that's okay.
Okay, so to set the scene for today, to give a bit of an understanding about Microsoft Dynamics Field Service and FLS and how they work together, this slide is showing one example of perhaps how an organization might separate the different roles and functions that they perform within an end-to-end field service business process. Across the top row, we have roles or people who do things. At the very bottom, we have the applications that we'll use. And in the middle section, we've got the functions that they perform together with the application functionality to support them in the role. This is just one example of separation of roles for field service. Different organizations work in different ways, and we see that with all the customers that we work with on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis. Dynamics is entirely configurable to support either more simple or more complex processes with a completely different separation of duties. So just to bear in mind that this is just one example of how you might structure your field service operations. Starting from the top left, and then we'll move right. Firstly, we have an administrator type role who might be responsible for things like managing resources, setting up the work hours, their skills, their territories and or locations, setting up the work orders or the types of jobs that they deliver, the tasks that define the work that's performed within those particular jobs, and things like assets as well. So there's a lot of work that an administrator can perform within the core Dynamics product. And this is effectively all set up within Dynamics Field Service. So this is performed within the standard capability of the application. And you can see that's what we're trying to represent in the very bottom row here. So the administrator is working with the core Dynamics product. Moving along to the right, we have the planner role, the scheduler. And this is where we'll have a strong focus today. This is all about the scheduling aspect. In the green box underneath, there are some standard Dynamics capabilities called out, such as manual or assisted scheduling. There's also the schedule board that you get with the standard capability where planners can track and monitor resources and the work orders that are scheduled. There's also the ability to bring in things like Microsoft's RSO, so resource schedule and optimization, their solution for delivering automated scheduling of work orders. But beyond that, where we can bring in FLS, we've highlighted this as a blue box underneath. This is where we can have features that will deliver a scheduling upgrade. And this is with more powerful automated real-time capabilities for planners. And this will help reduce manual effort and increase productivity of planners. It will also make engineers more productive, and it'll reduce costs for the business. And we'll see that as we go through the demonstration today. Some of the examples of upgrading schedule capabilities that are in FLS is we've got things like cost optimized appointments. So what that is identifying the most cost-effective date, time, and resource to fulfill a particular appointment. Got things like real-time optimization, where the system automatically generates a cost-optimized schedule without the need for any manual work by a planner. Things like time of day routing, so taking into consideration factors which might impact an engineer arriving on site at a particular time of the day. And other features such as in-day optimization, so automatically reacting to changes in a day and automatically optimizing the schedule to manage those changes without the need for a planner to go and do that manually. So for this planner role in the middle column on the slide, an organization could use the standard features of Dynamics, which is in the green box, and they could use that Dynamics Field Service and RSO, or where required, they could have upgraded scheduling capabilities using FLS that bring in those more advanced features. Simon will go into a lot more detail on the FLS capabilities, together with some of the key drivers on when you should consider using FLS versus perhaps just using the standard functionality within Dynamics Field Service and RSO. Continuing along the roles at the top, next we have a field engineer who will be assigned the work orders. They will use Dynamics 365 Field Service mobile app for things like viewing their calendar, getting directions to a particular customer, completing jobs, capturing photographs, etc. And lastly, in the scenario that we're showing, that we have a supervisor or perhaps a finance type role at the end that might be responsible for reviewing, approving and completing those work orders, then generating billing invoices if required. They would also use the standard capabilities of Dynamics, and we can see that in the bottom row. So what the slide is showing is that with upgraded scheduling in FLS, it's providing additional tools and functionality to improve and optimize the scheduling for planners that we can see in the middle column. All the other roles, such as administrators, field engineers, supervisors, or finance teams that we see at the end, they will work as they currently do, and they'll just use the standard Microsoft Dynamics functionality. So effectively bringing in FLS will provide the planners with new tools and advanced features, but it will have really little impact on the other roles in that end-to-end business process. We'll see in the demo that the FLS schedule board is also very similar to the Dynamics Field Service schedule board, albeit with more advanced functionality. Now, therefore, any customer considering upgrading their scheduling to use FLS, they should not really have a steep learning curve for those planners to use those new tools and features. I'm going to hand back to Simon now, and he'll go into a little bit more detail on FLS and the Visitour application.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Cameron. Next slide, please, Hamish. So let's explain a little bit more for everyone on the meeting today, just a little bit more about what FLS is. Well, again, I think as Cameron's explained, at the heart of the solution, we're a cost optimized booking solution. Again, we're literally all the time behind the scenes trying to dynamically schedule jobs. And it's not just about dynamically scheduling it then and there, it's about making sure that the jobs are always optimum within the system as well. One of the unique things about FLS, and one of the unique offerings that you can get out of this presentation if you wish, is one of the things that we can do jointly with ANS is something called a scheduling test. And typically when we do these scheduling tests, it's taking your data. We typically find that as a minimum, you're getting about a 20% saving in your actually mileage and traveling time. And again, when you look at that across a large field force, that's pretty substantial. And it's also about just making sure that we're actually dealing with the in-day optimization as well, where obviously different things happen during the day, people go off sick. Again, it's being able to deal with those scenarios instantly, not go off and have to run a batch optimization process, which a lot of other scheduling tools do. No, it's about literally doing it real time, sub-second, as you'll see in a second. And also it's about making sure that we're dealing with all the embedded time of day routing, because again, that's really key when you're actually going through and thinking about a scheduling process for the day, not just in advance, but also during the in-day as well. Next slide, please, Hamish. So for those of you who thought about using RSO, absolutely. Again, we typically aim for customers who have got more than about 40, 50 operatives. And again, so people can understand some of the real differences between where RSO stops and where FLS starts. Here's a whole list of things that you can read through quicker than I can say them. I'll bring out maybe just a couple of points on here. For instance, we deal with what a lot of customers have requirements for, which is complex relations, where you've got multiple engineers on a job, or you've got dependency type jobs where you need, I don't know, a gas engineer to go first, and then the electrician's got to come along after that, and then the gas fitter can only go back once the electrician's finished. Dependencies. So again, we deal with that standard out the box. Obviously, I mentioned already routing time accuracy. So obviously having the understanding of how long it takes to get from A to B to C, dependent on the time of day, and I'll bring that alive a little bit later on for you as well during the presentation. And I think also it's about the scalability and the future proofness of the solution, because quite a lot of our prospective customers, they start using the solution with requirements in mind. They hit those requirements normally within a couple of months, and they want to change direction. Again, having the configurability at the heart of the solution is absolutely key as well. Okay, next slide, please. So what is the true value of optimization? Well, again, I think this one slide explains it so well. On the left-hand side of the screen was one of our prospective customers, and this is what they were doing on a particular day using their standard scheduling kind of routing package they had, which is very simplistic and it was very manual as well. The right-hand side of the screen is exactly the same day, but played back using the FLS scheduling engine. So in this instance, we saved the customer over £12,500 a day. Do the maths. That's an awful lot of money when you ramp that up over the year. Scheduling, when you do it correctly, can save you an awful lot of money. And organizations, as they get bigger, typically they can either stay where they are and do lots of manual planning, and they had to take on more planners to help them with that, or they jump into the kind of dynamic scheduling world where solutions like FLS joined up with Dynamics can offer that real value to you as a customer. So that, I think, is one of the easiest ways to explain what dynamic scheduling actually does and how it delivers value from day one. Back to you, Cameron.
Okay, thanks, Simon. So we'll do a couple of demonstrations today, firstly from Microsoft Dynamics and then from an FLS perspective. To set the scene for the demonstration, if you can imagine this scenario where we have a customer. We have Mr. Demanding, top left, who has a gas boiler failure and has logged that issue perhaps on a self-service portal or an app, but ultimately a case has been automatically created and it's been routed through to the customer service team with Tina. So as you can see in following the flow through, that we have Tina who picks up this case. She cannot fix it remotely, but now wants to schedule an on-site appointment for an engineer to visit and resolve the problem. So Tina can effectively create a work order directly within Dynamics from that case that could typically be sent through to planning or planning team. And that's really to find the best resource to schedule that appointment for the customer. Or, as we're going to show today, as you can see, the alternative option that we've got here next to Tina. Tina will use the FLS solution integrated into Dynamics that will offer an appointment to this customer, and it will also highlight the most cost-effective resource to fulfill that appointment. We'll see how quick and simple it is to find and book that appointment as well through that integration from Dynamics to FLS. Typically, once scheduled, there would like to be some comms that go back to the customer, so we've not represented that in the flow here today. But next, we have the next row in the flow is Kyle as a planner, and this is where Simon will pick up in the second part of the demonstration, showing the much more powerful FLS Visitour schedule board and all the automated features of real-time scheduling. So we're going to a lot more in-depth demonstration around what FLS can do for the planner and those advanced features. So how Visitour can perhaps react to changes in the day, such as an engineer having an unplanned day off, and then effectively throwing all those appointments from that day in the air, and then coming up with the most optimized schedule for the engineers on that specific day. So doing that all automatically without the need for a planner to manually shift those all around. Lastly, in the scenario, we have Mark. It's a field engineer who's responsible for completing the work that's been assigned to him and doing that on site. We will show the Dynamics 365 Field Service mobile app in the context of Mark as a separate webinar when we focus solely on Dynamics Field Service. Today, we want to show a bit more about what upgraded scheduling capabilities of FLS are and what they offer the planner role. So that's our main focus today, is around the planner, and if you can imagine Kyle's role here. Let me move into Dynamics and start some demonstrations. Okay, hopefully you can see this okay. What we see here are a list of incoming cases similar to this scenario that we just discussed. These cases might have come in via different channels, perhaps a self-service web portal, a mobile app, perhaps Copilot, IoT. They don't need to have come in via the phone channel. There is a case at the top here, and this is for an emergency gas boiler failure. And if we open this up, what we see here is this is the standard Dynamics case form, and we can see typical information that we've captured, details on the customer, the case, information on that, and the interactions that we have with the customer and the timeline control in the middle. As in the scenario, the customer service agent cannot remotely resolve this issue, so they want to create a work order for an on-site visit. On the toolbar, there's a button, Convert to Work Order. that we can see here. This is a standard Microsoft Dynamics button where we want to create a job for the engineer to perform directly from this case that's come into Dynamics. So we can click that button. We'll just follow these prompts through. And we'll see here that Dynamics is going to create a new work order for this emergency gas boiler repair. And what we'll see here when this loads, that it's pulled through some of the information from the case, and we can see that the status of the work order is currently unscheduled. At this stage, some organizations could have a planner or scheduler responsible for finding the engineer an appointment type for this work order, and that's entirely fine. But in the scenario that we're going to show today, this is where we might have the customer on the phone or perhaps in a web chat, and we want to offer them an appointment and get that booked whilst immediately in that conversation. On the toolbar, you'll see that there's a new button that we've got here, and it's called Book FLS Appointment. That's not a standard Dynamics button. This has appeared because we've imported an FLS's own add-on solution for Microsoft Dynamics to provide more advanced scheduling directly within this Dynamics application for specifically these scenarios. So there's no need to move between different forms or between different applications. The customer service agent can effectively click this button and we open up a new form. So we want to create a new booking. This is, again, pulled through the information on the work order to say that this is for an emergency gas boiler repair. And it's pulled through some of the information that we've got here, that the duration is also for an hour. I can use some of the parameters that we've got here, such as the dates and times, to filter down the results. And then if I click the availability, FLS will now go off and it'll return back the engineers who could potentially fulfill this appointment. So as this is going away and interrogating the schedule, I can now see the options have been returned for different dates and times. But what's more interesting with this is that for each of these options, I've also been presented with a cost. So for Tuesday, the cost of sending Mark to this particular appointment is effectively £68, where on Wednesday, the cost of sending Amy for this particular appointment is £128. So FLS will always highlight the most cost-effective appointment for that customer. What is the most cost-effective appointment? Well, in terms of cost-effective, what do we mean by that? It could be based on perhaps fuel costs, or perhaps it could be based on the engineer time, or even the ability to adhere to SLAs. This can be configured within the FLS application to suit what costs are important to your business. So if I select the appointment, and I now schedule this against a particular resource and book this. What we'll see is that booking is now complete for that particular resource. And if I refresh this page here with the work order, we can now see that this has moved from unscheduled to scheduled, and we've got the information that this is booked against Mark Cunningham for this particular date and time. If this was a production solution, the customer would likely have access to the appointment booking, perhaps via a self-service portal or custom app, and have the ability to reschedule or cancel this appointment without the need for contacting the customer service team, effectively eliminating the need for further engagement or phone calls. But ultimately, what we're showing here is it's very simple and quick for these scenarios where the customer service agent needs to book an urgent appointment. We have this integration through to FLS, and effectively we can see the cost of sending different engineers to this particular appointment, and FLS will automatically recommend the most cost-effective appointment or resource for that particular need. Simon will pick up on the rest of the demo from the perspective of the planner and the schedule board, where we can see the appointments that have been booked in Visitour and the advanced real-time scheduling features. Over to you, Simon.
Thanks. Thanks, Cameron. Hopefully you can see my screen now. So why go down the route of having a dynamic scheduling engine? Well, I think this one slide explains it brilliantly well, because quite often if you start off as a small organization and you're maybe just scheduling about 10, 20 engineers, it's reasonably easy to do with very simple planning, application, or manually. Once you suddenly get to above 40, 50 engineers, 100, 1,000 engineers, it gets really hard. And why is it hard? Well, let's say you've got an engineer and he's got 10 visits to do. Guess what? There's 3.6 million possibilities of how that can be routed. Ramp that up to 500,000 engineers. It gets very hard to do manually, and that's why solutions like FLS are here. And certainly, we try to schedule things as close as we can towards being towards the theoretical optimal, i.e., the best. A lot of other scheduling tools out there are what we call batch-based, so they sit somewhere round about here, around about 70% optimization mark, and quite often for a lot of our customers, that's not good enough. You need to go that extra mile, quite literally, with regards to make those savings, so you can cut down the miles. So that's why people go down the route of having dynamic scheduling engines, because it's actually really hard to do manually. And typically, if you obviously expand in the field, you then have to expand in the back office. But with solutions like FLS, you don't. And why is FLS so good? Well, bluntly, I think when you compare it to other solutions out there, it's a really transparent solution. And that's really key when it comes to planners. Because if planners don't understand why a job has been given to a certain engineer, or why a job needs to be given to a certain engineer as well, that is absolutely key as well. And how it works very simply at the heart of FLS is that every job is given a target value, i.e. a cost. So again, all these things are kind of building towards that particular cost, along with all these particular constraints that you're seeing on the left-hand side, and many, many more. All these are being fed into the scheduling engine all the time to make sure you're always getting that best and optimal route. And the transparency is really key, because it's about making sure that when that engineer phones up and goes, well, why is he going there and I'm not? The planner can explain that. If planners get it, they trust it, and they let the solution get on with it. And that's really, really key. And also, it's about balancing in the scheduling world these three things: cost savings, having great customer satisfaction, and happy employees. The happy employees bit is really key nowadays as well. The engineering pool, it has shrunk a bit in the last few years. So keeping hold of your good engineers is really key. And if you can make sure they leave home in a decent time and get home in a decent time, that's half the battle won of actually keeping your employees. So how does FLS differ from some of the other solutions out there as well? Well, let's just give you a few very practical examples that you can very simply understand. If we take the left-hand side of the screen here, which is how most other scheduling engines work, we call them white space schedulers. So let's take the scenario here. We've got 3 guys, each of them can do a maximum of 3 jobs. A brand new job down here needs to be appointed. Now, in the white space world, it will go, that guy's full. The guy next to him that could do it, that's full. That guy's too far away. And that job then will have to flow over to another day. Seems a bit silly, really, considering the engineer's just around the corner. On the right-hand side of the screen is our world. How we work is literally, if it's an appointment-based job, when we're showing the appointments, as Cameron's just done, literally we're throwing every single job up in the air to get that appointment request. And we're going, actually, we could actually move one of those pink jobs to the blue guy and one of the blue jobs over to the orange guy, thus fitting that job in today, thus getting there quicker, thus saving mileage. The list goes on. So that's really key. That's one practical example of how FLS differs. Another really good example of how FLS differs is we're actually taking into account something called speed profiling. So why is speed profiling important? Well, actually, you've got to make sure that when you're planning an engineer's day, maybe a couple of days in advance, you need to make sure you're allowing for what the actual traveling time is going to be. So up here in the left-hand side of the screen is an example how most other scheduling engines work. Engineer lives in yellow, looks like a sensible route, and that's all great. However, in our world, the engineer who lived down here, exactly the same scenario, would never forgive us if we routed him into Bradford first thing in the morning, because it might take him 2, if not 3 times as long to travel to Bradford in rush hour than it would outside of rush hour. So we go 1, 2, 3, thus obviously helping him save time. Now, we may have cost him an extra half mile there, but we've saved him 30 minutes in time. And the reason we can do that is because at the heart of our solution, we've got inbuilt how long it takes for an engineer to travel between certain road segments. So we know that down to the time of day. So it's really key that you're taking that into account when you're planning, so you're giving the engineers a realistic travel time. Because say you've got maybe 5+ or even 4+ jobs scheduled in for an engineer, it's really key that you think about and get that traveling time right. Because if you get that wrong by even something as small as 5%, you're going to put his day in jeopardy. So that's really, really important. Okay, so let's show you a little bit of FLS now, just so you can actually understand how that looks and feels, and let's bring some of the things I've been saying to life for you. So here we are, we're sitting in the scheduling screen. It should look very familiar to planners that are sitting here amongst us. So again, down the left-hand side of the screen, you've got obviously got the engineers, the teams, and going across the right-hand side there, you've obviously got each of their days. On the right-hand side of the screen here, we've obviously got a map, and that map can be popped out into different user screens if they want. So if you've got dual panels like I've got here, again, you can put the map on the one screen and obviously just have the planning board on the other. Planners love this kind of thing because it's just being able to visually see what's going on really quickly. Each engineer has a start point and an end point each day that can differ for every single day. And all the jobs that we're seeing here, they're represented in different colors. So again, you just configure those to represent the colors that you want, either pull through from Dynamics for the different job types, etc. At the end of every day, you'll see this little green block, and this is something called processing time. So what we allow in the day as well is dependent on the types of jobs that they're doing. You can build up a certain amount of admin time in the day, so that's built into the engineer's working hours as well. Additionally, what we can do in a very similar vein, we can automatically, and I haven't done in this example here, you can put in lunch breaks. So say, for instance, you've got to make sure the engineer take lunch breaks between, I don't know, 11 and 2 for half an hour. That can be automatically put in at the right point, and that can maybe alter slightly during the day as well. So you're making sure you're hitting all those mandatory things that you've got to do for engineers as well. At the end of some of the days, you'll see a little yellow blob. Now, for instance, for this engineer, for James Poulton here, again, I can see that I've gone into flexi time. That's what this yellow blob means. Now, flexi time just means that in my system, I'm allowing myself to book jobs up to 105% for an engineer. So again, what I'm doing here is I can see I've only blown the day by 9 minutes, but it's allowed me to fit in one extra job. And the reason I've allowed myself to do that is because I'm assuming the engineer might actually try and catch up a bit on that particular day. And is the engineer going to really worry about 9 minutes? Unlikely. You might have a policy in place to always say, you know, it's got to be plus or minus 30 minutes for the engineers for their working hours. But again, there's hard rules in place to stop that. It's just down to you to configure how you want those things to go about as well. And there's obviously a lot more functionality in the solution than we can obviously talk about today, but there's just a few things I just wanted to show you. Speed of FLS is really important. I'm just going to do one thing now that you wouldn't normally do. And I'm just going to literally shut my escalation monitor down and turn my optimization off. So all the jobs you can see here, they've all been escalated up to this top panel. So for a planner's view, you know, when you've got jobs in the top planner, you need to do something about it. If I just now go back into the system and just go, right, let's just optimize the solution here and actually just turn it back on again. Behind the scenes, what it's done there is it's just gone through and optimized that day's work for me that quickly in less than a second. This is what we're doing in FLS. It's just speed here is absolutely imperative. Let's take maybe another example that you would come across every single day. So, you know, at the beginning of the day, you think, right, brilliant. Let's just get everything all planned out, and you think, great, my plan looks fantastic. And then suddenly, you know, one of the engineers phones up. So in this instance, Rachel phones up and she says, I'm really sorry, got a bit of a crisis at home this morning. I need to go on some unplanned holiday. So let's put her on holiday. What the system does now behind the scenes is it's just going away and going, right, let's have a look at availability. Let's look at what's going on. Let's try to redistribute all the jobs around the other engineers I've got in that area. And it's done that immediately. It's put obviously some of these jobs down to an installation contractor. Let's push it a bit harder now. And John now phones up and says, I'm really sorry, I've gone off sick today. So again, what the schedule is going to do now is it's going to go through and it's going to just try and re-optimize those engineers' days. And as you see now, it's done that, but there's now 3 jobs that have appeared in my escalation panel here at the top. And all this is actually doing for me is it's just showing to me the jobs that are there, and I can drill down to them if I want to. But again, I can quickly go in and something called and analyze this job. So this is about the transparency. So in this scenario, there's 3 jobs there. I've got to fit them in today, even though I've got people off sick and on holiday. And what this solution is now doing here is it's telling me who I could give the job to if I really, really have to. I'm going to break some rules, which is what it's saying, but it's immediately ruling out for me the bottom 2 engineers, because you say, I can't give it to these 2 guys because they haven't got the skills, and that's why I haven't done it. But actually, the top 2 guys, I could give that job to. But in this instance here, I can see actually the best person to put it to will be Lewis, because we're going to blow his route by about 44 minutes in the day, and we can blow his working day by 44 minutes. But more importantly, we can fit it in. So we're just trying to steer the operator towards, you know, the best solution for them. So again, it really is just down to how you configure the solution to do that. I'm just going to move that job, so that job's moved straight into their schedule. And you can see now we've blown that engineer's day, and they popped into overtime now. So again, it's just making the solution really quick and easy for obviously people to understand and go through. I think finally, just a couple of other things. I was talking to Cameron about this morning. There's lots of things and features that we've got in the scheduling board that can be of real use. So say, for instance, you know, we have some customers that work in a kind of domestic scenario where they're actually visiting customers who actually live in residential areas. And maybe one of the things that I want to do is, you know, an engineer, let's just pretend here, Amy, we're looking for a little bit more work for her because we can see that maybe she got a little bit of a slack there on that particular day. But actually what I want to do is actually just drill down to Amy and say, okay, well, for Amy, where are some other jobs that I could pull forward? And immediately you could see here, if I actually just change the map to maybe her road course of the day, if, for instance, I needed to fill her up and actually bring forward some other jobs that were booked on other days, I'm being quickly shown here jobs that are booked on other days that are near that particular route. So, you know, maybe this one here would be a great candidate. It's just making the operators' lives and the planners' lives really easy, because that's what FLS is about. It's about making sure that the planners are just seeing absolutely everything they need to really, really quickly and simply. So efficiency really, really matters. And certainly with regards to how some of the key points of, you know, what FLS is all about is there. But going back to what the kind of webinar is about, which is delivering customer excellence, bluntly, it's about making sure that we're sending the correct engineer the first time, so we can fix jobs and get that done. That's absolutely key. And making sure we're sending the right guy, that's really key. Giving the customers visibility maybe of even when the engineer is going to turn up. Giving more time for the engineer to actually work with the customer, build that customer relationship, that's really key as well. And obviously efficient working increases customer satisfaction and loyalty. And I think finally, you know, less driving time as well means less stressed field employees, because it's about making sure that we're delivering that value to the customers that we've got. And more importantly, if we can deliver some of that value back to those customers, again, that's what it's all about. It's about passing those savings, not just onto us as a business, but also passing those savings onto your customers, so we can actually remain competitive in the solution as well. Okay, I know I've flown through that really quickly. There's a lot more to see here, but Hamish, I'm just going to let you kind of like sum up now from the day that we've had.
Absolutely. And that was brilliant. That was really insightful. Hopefully, lots of people to have learned, understood there, and in terms of next steps, if you want to talk about this more, as Simon mentioned, we've flown through that in sort of 40 minutes or so. So there's a ton more we can go into, lots more detail. If you want to have a follow-up meeting with either the team at ANS or at FLS or combined, do just let us know. We're more than happy to put that in the diary. We've got our ANS Field Service Navigator coming live. So for those of you who've joined us before, you'll know that we run a number of different navigators that are essentially our routes for customers to get up to speed with Dynamics 365. And if you want to look at that in conjunction with FLS, please let us know, and we'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that service and how we can get you started. FLS as well offer really brilliant scheduling tests as well. I think this would be really beneficial for anyone who wants to really understand the impact of that FLS Visitour solution on you know, perhaps a custom bit of data. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Simon, but with some of your own data, and see where some of the benefits that your organisation can find from that will look like. And of course, please do continue to join us on our Dynamics 365 Unlocked webinar series as well. Our next few sessions are coming up, and then you can see there in the diary what you've got on the schedule. Otherwise, unless any questions in the chat, which I think James has been very diligently answering in the background, thank you so much for your time. Please do join us again, and if you want to reach out to any of us, our contact details are there. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, thank you for your time and have a wonderful day. Thanks all.
Thank you all.